within the we first of all start by looking within the African Literature Association, within the African Studies Association, the ASA UK, the ASA of Africa for our peer reviewers. I will also add that we keep in mind the location of the author. So if we have an author who is based in Nigeria who submits an article to us, we will endeavor to have at least one of the peer reviewers also be someone who is located in Nigeria, who's familiar with the academic community and the academic practices, that have shaped the particular author who's submitting an article to us. I'll just stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what's clear also from what you're saying is that your journal is connected to an academic association, and the journal builds the community as well as publishing the community. Thank you very much for that response. And I will now turn to Professor Gbenga Fasiku to ask the same question. Please, Prof.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to apologize. My visual developed a fault, and I didn't want to interrupt this session. I would have changed my system to another. Please pardon this this error at this time, please.
We will interpret this, Prof, as that you are being here metaphysically.
Okay, but you could, you hear me.
We can hear you well.
Okay, just that my face is what you cannot see. I'm sorry about that. Okay, second order, an African Journal of Philosophy is a journal in the Department of Philosophy of Obafemi Awolowo University. It started publishing in 1972, and as a university journal, I'm glad that many of my colleagues here are from Nigeria, and so they know some of the issues that are at home about funding and about the sustainability of journals. But the journal started in 1972, was rested sometimes in 1984, but resuscitated again. But now the new crop of scholars in the Department of Philosophy has resuscitated it again, and it's doing very well. So we started publishing new series of the journal in 2019. We've had 2019 edition, 2020, and 2021. Currently, the 2022 edition is, we are working on that. And so the coverage of the journal, philosophers and colleagues and scholars in humanities studies generally. And then we have our review, the web of our reviewers are mainly those who are most scholars in philosophy, because most of the articles that are received are from philosophy, and then in almost all areas of philosophy: metaphysics, ethics, epistemology, logic, and African philosophy. Most cases will have contributors and submissions from other areas of humanities like religious studies, sociology, even in some cases, education. And then in this case, we harvest our reviewers from scholars, both within and outside Nigeria, in related areas that the submissions cover. And then we explore professional organizations like Philosopher Association of Nigeria and the Nigerian Philosophical Association, and many other organizations that are partnering with the Department of Philosophy in ensuring that this journal is well established and processed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and congratulations on resuscitating the journal again. We know how hard it is to keep journals going. That was an important topic we discussed last year at the same panel about African Notes, from Ibadan, how they have also managed to keep going with a gap here or there. I myself am also the editor of a journal that's had to be resuscitated a few times, and it's difficult to reinvent a journal. So congratulations on doing that. And I do think that it's a time for that many young scholars are wanting to publish in this kind of journal. So that's very useful to hear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm now going to turn to Professor Iheka to talk to us about African Studies Review.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kutsia, for the invitation and for the generous introduction and for facilitating this. Yeah, the African Studies Review is, as you mentioned, is the flagship journal of the African Studies Association, which meets annually in November somewhere in the United States and hopefully sometime soon outside of it. I think, you know, maybe I should begin by, you know, what sets us apart, I think, you know, from many of the other journals being helmed by the distinguished, you know, editors on this panel, is this notion of multidisciplinarity. If JALA publishes in literary and cultural studies more broadly, Dr. Fashiku's journal, you know, is centered on philosophy and ethics. You know, we draw our papers from all fields of African studies. The kind of work that comes to African Studies Review, the important point is, you know, is it's oriented in African studies. But more importantly, how can you come out of your disciplinary niche to speak to a broader audience? You know, how can you come from your disciplinary, you know, niche to speak to a broader audience? So, for instance, an article, you know, focusing on the NSAS, you know, protest, which is one theme that I've seen on many papers at this conference, for example, maybe coming out of, you know, literature. You know, how can you make it speak broader to, you know, conversations in African studies? I think that is the most important thing that we look at as editors when we review. Because again, we are editors, and there are about 10 of us coming from different disciplines. You know, I have to read something in sociology, in agriculture, in zoology. For it to make sense to me, I need to see how it's speaking to someone who is not in your field. So that's really something that is important for the kind of works we publish. Of course, we publish in mostly, especially in social sciences, we publish things that specifically history, anthropology, but more and more we're looking for those papers that speak outside, you know, primary disciplines to address, you know, issues in African studies. And to come to the question of our peer, our audience, again, the ASA members primarily, but we do like to speak to audiences, you know, across the world with some interest in Africa. That also means that, you know, we've endeavored in the past few years, in the last 5 years, since this editorial collective has come up, to draw peer reviewers from everywhere, especially, you know, colleagues, you know, who are working, you know, in Africa. How can we, you know, so we've tried to make our review process as inclusive as possible. Of course, bearing in mind that it's an imperfect process, but we try as much as possible to draw reviewers from everywhere to ensure ultimately that that the broad spectrum of African studies, you know, get an input into the kind of works that we publish. So in a nutshell, we're interested in work that draws from whatever discipline, but that rises out of the details of the discipline to speak to a broader audience. You know, and we promise to give such papers, you know, a fair hearing, you know, including in the selection of reviewers and the review process. Yeah, thank you.
Could I ask you just to add here something about the innovation that you recently brought in about book reviews, or would you prefer to speak about that later?
Let me speak about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Good. Yeah. All right. Make a note. Don't forget. Thank you very much. Now, can I move, please, to Professor Ochonu? Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. So the Journal of African History is published by Cambridge University Press. It started in 1960. And I made a recent social media Facebook post to say that to my Nigerian followers that the first article published in the first edition of the journal was on the origin of the name Nigeria. So I took a photo of the the first page, first edition, first everything, first article, and posted it on my timeline. I thought that was interesting, and I made a joke and I said, even in these types of things, Nigeria they carry last, meaning we always say first. So anyway. The journal it's the journal of record, and some people say the flagship journal, whichever term you prefer, for historians who are interested in Africa. It's the oldest, but it's also considered, the #1 venue to publish. It is a traditional history journal in the sense that we publish articles based on original research. Original research meaning, the use of archives, the primary sources, ethnographic methods, oral sources, and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of article that we typically publish. And the article has to have its own life, has to have its own identity, has to stand alone, and have a coherent argument, and have a coherent engagement with existing historiographical literature. It has to have a life of its own outside of, it could be drawn from a dissertation, from a book in progress, but it ought to be able to speak to a reader without the reader consulting the larger work from which it is drawn. So that's the kind of work that we publish. In terms of readers, we are read mainly by, I would say, historians, anthropologists, because anthropologists are interested in our journal because increasingly, they are using historical methods. There are a lot of anthropologists that work in archives now. So we have an audience of anthropologists and also sociologists. This is what surprised me when I came into the journal as editor, that a lot of sociologists read us and actually send material to us, because obviously there's a whole branch of sociology that is historical sociology. So, and they do what we do as historians. They use the archives, they use the same methodology, and they construct arguments in the same way that we do. And I think historians, a lot of historians now use ethnographic methods. So there's this overlap, this wonderful overlap between history and anthropology. So, we get a lot of submissions now from anthropologists and historical sociologists. Reviewers, our reviewers tend to be mostly historians scattered all around the world, in the US, Nigeria, South Africa, UK, everywhere. And although lately, we have been reaching out more and more to people outside of the historical field. As editor, I've sent materials to political scientists because I thought I wanted the perspective of a political scientist, because there was a significant political studies content in the paper. I've sent materials, I believe, to literary scholars, to archaeologists, and lately I've had cause to send papers to reviewers who are economists, because a particular paper probably, had a lot of quantitative content, especially, the historians who use the quantitative methodologies and who use regression analysis. And, that's not what that's not my strong suit. So I like to get people involved who are actually trained in those types of methods. The final thing I'm going to say is that the journal has evolved since its inception. And maybe I can talk about the other ways in which it has evolved. But I think the most important one is that, the journal used to publish what now everyone in history knows as imperial history. When it began, basically, to put it crudely, the history of what the white man or the white woman did in Africa. We no longer do that. We've tried to move away from that type of history, which is basically focusing on white agency in Africa. Now we publish exclusively, I would say, papers that deal with Africans living, working, acting in Africa, or their material, their voices, their activism. The paper has to significantly focus on the lives and experiences of Africans themselves before we can even take a serious look at it, let alone send it out for review. Okay, I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that origin narrative. It seems like a lot of things are turning 60 this year, even some of us on the panel maybe. That there really is something about the 60-year centenary, or no, not centenary, whatever the word is, anniversary. So it's interesting to hear that the journal also is that same age. What you describe about the journal, I think it's incredibly important for historians to read as many articles as possible from that journal to see how the material, we had a lively debate about that today in the writing workshop about what are the protocols. Must historians also do a literature survey? I'm guessing yes. So read as many articles as you can from each of these journals. If you're thinking of submitting to them, it's like any other thing in life. You have to practice and you have to look at examples. No one's going to pick up a musical instrument without ever having practiced and think you can give a concert. It's the same with a journal article. You need to know the journal well before you submit. Those were really interesting answers. Thank you very much. So my second question was going to be, how old is the journal? So we found that out about a few of the journals already. And how does it sustain itself? Now that is a really big question. Yesterday in the Women's Mentoring Network, we spoke about invisible labor. And now it's interesting that Professor Fashiku is even invisible, because editors do a lot of invisible labor. So if you could please talk to us about how your journal sustains itself, by which I mean money. What pays for it? How can journals give a product without charging authors fees? So Professor Adejunmobi, would you maybe like to start?
Thank you very much. We are fortunate. We're fortunate to be a journal that's connected to an association like the African Studies Review. So the membership dues that members of the African Literature Association pay go into a larger fund. And part of that larger fund helps to sustain the journal financially. The other source of revenue and income for the journal is subscriptions from libraries around the world. Those are the two main sources of funding for the journal. I should point out that, however, we do not pay the editors of the journal. We do not pay, in general, the peer reviewers of the journal. The only exception that we make is when we have a special issue and we have a big batch of articles on a related subject, and we want one person to review the entire batch, which is kind of like asking someone to review a book manuscript. In that case, we will make a modest fee available to the reviewer, whoever it is that agrees to review the journal for us. So we don't pay the authors. Not only do we not pay the authors, we do not ask the authors to pay to have their articles published in the journal. We do not pay the editors. By and large, we do not pay the peer reviewers, with very few exceptions. I think you asked a question about the age of the journal, when the journal was founded. In this esteemed gathering of journal editors, Jala is the new kid on the block, I'm afraid to say. We are the we're the little kid, we're the little child, because even though the African Literature Association has had a newsletter and other kinds of publications for many, many, many years, the journal itself came into existence in the 2000s. It came into existence in the 2000s. And so it's a relatively young journal. Previously, the best known journal of African literature was Research, which is still the best known journal, is Research in African Literatures. There's several other journals of African literature based out of the African continent. And we thought there was room for more, which is why the African Literature Association created the Journal of the African Literature Association to complement the number of journals available, the number of platforms available for literary scholars, and to widen the scope, to give more opportunity for different kinds of authors to get their work published. And maybe in another round of questions, I'll come back to some of the things that we are particularly interested in when we receive a submission.
Thank you very much. So someone's asking something about the Journal of African Cultural Studies. Yes, I could. I don't want to abuse my position here as chair, but I could talk until tomorrow about my journal. It is my obsession and my passion. So the Journal of African Cultural Studies is 35 years old. It's been resuscitated at least twice. It started out as a journal of the study of African languages. That's a particular moment when white linguists were describing African languages. That's the kind of paper we published. Now we tend to publish articles dealing with contemporary or not contemporary cultural studies. And the kind of journal we like to receive shows evidence of actually having walked the street. For, I remember Professor Tejumola Olania made his eyes big when I said that, and he said, no, for Jala, you can sit in the library all day. They don't mind. You don't have to leave the library. But for my journal, what is really important is to show real understanding of what you are writing about from the ground up. But I will not, let me not abuse my position as chair here too much. Let me move on and invite the other editors here to respond. Professor Fashiku, could you please tell us, you've told us how old the journal is, but could you tell us how you sustain yourself? How does this resuscitation happen?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say one more thing about the coverage of the journal, which I did not really emphasize that the last time I spoke on that. The second order, which is also referred to as Journal of African Philosophy, is a journal that welcomes contributions not only in philosophy, but we're also looking at articles in other areas of other disciplines other than philosophy. But we would like such papers to show interest in engaging African issues, African thoughts and belief systems. It also welcomes book reviews, discussion notes and critical notes on current and issues in philosophy and others. Well, but specifically, I hope
we can hear
hello?
you, sir. Yep,
you can hear me.
We can.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. Now, on the issue of sustainability, well, like I said, the journal started as a university journal and was mainly financed by the university. In fact, it was printed by the university press for many years. And when it was stopped, part of why it was stopped was that universities stopped providing funds to the university press. And so we have manuscripts that were not printed because the university press couldn't do so. So when we met in the department and wanted to do the resuscitation, first of all, we have to look at where we could get resources from. And mainly the resources came from contributions by members of the department. And then we reached out to colleagues and scholars. who have the love of the department at heart, and they supported the department with some funds in terms of even some resources like laptop and printers that could be used to work. And then we also got some grants from some organizations, just little, not much, but these are things that we have used to. Then the editors and the department also attempted to reconnect with old subscribers. You know, the journal, when it was alive in those years, we had information that the journal was subscribed to by many universities, home and abroad. Harvard University, Cambridge University, and many other universities across the world. We've been trying to get in touch with some of these universities to reconnect with them and then to activate the subscribing process and also look for new ones. But for now, we are trying to raise funds among ourselves to continue to sustain the journal. Presently, we do not charge fees from author, so authors don't pay. And also, we also do not pay assessors. We also do not pay editors because if we wanted to, we don't even have the resources to do so. But basically, this is how we sustain the journal, on grants, gifts by friends, and we are hoping that by the time the journal continues to work, subscribers, some of them are already coming back gradually. Subscribers will increase, and then gradually we will have funds. The journal is not lucky to be associated with any association. It is a university journal, is owned by the Department of Philosophy. We are hoping that if funding of university increases, it is also possible that the journal will also have some life of its own by virtue of the department funding it. So let me stop here for now. Thank you very much.
Prof, what you describe is indeed very admirable. A journal that is energetic, forward-looking, looking for funding, reconnecting with old subscribers. Honestly, you put the rest of us to shame. That is really impressive. And I can see why the journal has been resuscitated. The model you describe of finding patrons or benefactors, I think is a really very promising, but of course it takes incredible time and commitment to do that. So we really congratulate you on the efforts. And this, to me, seems like a golden era for African philosophy. There are so many young scholars. So I think your journal is receiving good attention, but it will also receive many good submissions. Thank you for that account. I'm going to move on now to Professor Iheka, please.
Sure. So ASA, ASR, I think, started in 1958. So it's, it's been around for a minute now. Our funding comes from the association primarily too. The African Studies Association subsidizes the cost of running the journal. We also get some support from the publisher, Cambridge University Press, that comes from, what they get from selling rights to the journal, from subscriptions from across the world, from library access as well. So those are the two primary model for funding that we get. And we do use that to cover, the costs for, hiring a managing editor. The managing editor, that's really that's the only person who get paid on the journal. So from the peer reviewers to the editors, this is part of our service responsibilities to the profession. So we don't get paid for, for that. But it also means that authors don't get paid for their papers. This is something that comes up again and again. Why don't authors get paid? for publishing this thing. So publishers, in fact, just in Nigeria last week, someone was still asking me that question. If publishers are making so much money from these articles. But it also means that authors don't also pay to publish their work. If the work goes to peer review and is accepted, it is published, except when authors want their work to be open access. And if the university don't have a kind of licensing agreement with Cambridge at this point, then they may have to cover that, the cost of making their work open access so that anybody can access it from anywhere in the world without having a subscription. But other than that, we don't charge for the work of the journal. So I want to quickly now, come back to the question too that you asked earlier about the peer review model that we're using now. Yeah, it's something we're experimenting with to see how it goes. And I want to begin with its origins. So every year we get this.
Sorry, is this the book review or the peer review?
Sorry, the book review. Yes, the book review. Every year we get this. We get a report from Cambridge about the number of articles and reviews and the process to publish the book. And it became clear to us that the same set of publishers, we were reviewing books by the same set of publishers. You can guess, the big ones. So that came out of, and the journal, this journal has a storied past, which is not always pleasant in terms of the composition of its editorial team, in terms of who it publishes and what it publishes. And we've been working, in the past 5 years to address that. We're not there yet, but I think, we're making progress in that direction. And so the part of what we started doing is that publishers don't send us books anymore. So you just let us know when the book is coming out. You let us know the title, and then we create a stub for the title. So it means that even if a book is published in Lagos, the publisher doesn't have to worry about, now I have to send it to the United States to ASR for it to be reviewed in there. So just send us a title for it. And then we create a stub in a manuscript system and then try to find the reviewer for the book. So we try to find, so we get about 4 to 6 names of possible reviewers, and then we go through the list one by one, so that if the book is in Lagos, then we try to find someone who is nearby. If the book is in Ouagadougou, we try to do the same thing. So in that way, when we match the book to a reviewer, then the book is now sent to that to that person to review. But this also means that if we go through six possible reviewers and everybody says no, the universe is not favoring the book, to be reviewed in ASR, and we have to drop it and move on to the next one. So we try to think of this as us not determining what's important to review. We see this as the field, as a membership, as reviewers determining, what book gets to be reviewed and what doesn't get to be reviewed. So, as I mentioned earlier, time will tell how effective this is, but it's something we see as an effort to address the problem of reviewing the same set of the books by the same set of publishers and leaving out other important books, but published by maybe less resource process. So we'll see how it goes, over time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Professor Ochonu, about how you sustain yourself.
Yeah, ours is a straightforward model, actually, and a lot of what Professor Hika said applies to the Journal of African History. It's published by Cambridge University Press, so it's funded essentially by Cambridge University Press, and I think the Cambridge operates on the subscription model, right? Which it signs these contracts with libraries and universities, and essentially sells them their products or their journals in bulk, right? Gives these libraries access to, and the library or university pays an annual subscription fee And that's how it operates. Obviously, as Professor Heka said, if your university, if you work within an institution and the institution does not have a licensing agreement with Cambridge University Press, and you want your accepted article to be published open access, then you have to pay an extra fee. But most universities in North America now have licensing agreements with Cambridge University Press. We don't also pay our reviewers. The editors are not paid. The only person who is paid, or the only editor who is paid, is the managing editor. So that structure is similar to that of the African Studies Review. Of course, as others have said, if your paper is accepted in the journal, you don't pay a fee to get it published. But this all ties in, it seems to me, with the question of access, right? Especially access to people who are located outside of Euro-America, people located particularly in Africa. And I'm looking at the chat and I see some questions regarding that, actually. So,
yes.
So I might as well.
I think we all have answers about that one, but if you wanted to say something, well, there's two types of answers. The one is the kind of metaphysical answer, and the other one is like, where right now, where can we get it right?
Right, exactly. So the answer that I'm going to give now is more general. It's in terms of, so the journal, it's moving away from. I think what it's trying to do now, it's not just the Journal of African History. All Cambridge University Press journals, I think what they are trying to do is to move away from the subscription model, because ultimately they are going in the direction of opening up everything, making everything open access. So in order to do that, I think what they're doing is to sell these journals as packages to universities and institutions and libraries. Okay, you pay us this amount of money every year, and we'll pretty much just guarantee that everything will be open access. So that funds their operations, pays for the publication cost of the journal, pays the managing editor and everything. But it will open up the journal. I think they are about a year or so away from accomplishing that. And some of my Nigerian interlocutors and colleagues will be happy, especially those of them that are historians, will be happy that although that Cambridge University Press is extending some of that to African universities, and they are making it free. So they are not asking the universities to pay. The caveat there is that initially Nigeria did not qualify because there were means testing the universities and countries, and they were looking at poor countries in their definition, and Nigeria didn't qualify. So I was joking with the guy who oversees our journal. I said, how come? By what metrics are you arriving at this decision that Nigeria doesn't qualify? But the happy news is that in our last editorial meeting, he said that they are going to experiment with, I think, 4 universities in Nigeria in the coming months. Unilag is one of them. I think Ibadan is the other, and maybe 2 other universities. So that should open up pretty much all the journal articles, starting from the beginning to the present, in these 4 universities to begin for now. But, this is being recorded, but hey, I don't want to say anything that will incriminate me.
Please,
but if it's in these 4 universities, right? If it's in these 4 universities, my sense is that these our resourceful people will find a way to to make sure that people have people in other universities that are not covered have access to these articles. Thank you.
Is there a solution like right now today? So I can say that for Taylor and Francis journals, which is my journal and Professor Adejun Mumbi, there's a voucher through which you can access, and you should never, ever have to pay for an article. So an Africa-based scholar must never, ever pay for a Taylor and Francis article. I do not know, I've not been able to get an answer out of Cambridge University Press. I've been asking them about this, and every time I ask, they say, interesting, aha, interesting. We shall have a look at this, and they never give me the voucher. But Taylor and Francis do give this voucher. So there's also, most Nigerian universities with digital access. We'll have JSTOR, but I think also JSTOR one can access as an individual. You don't have to be inside a university system. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. Do you know? I don't know. For a long time, I didn't have a library access, so I was funding is tricky, to be honest. Yes, okay, we understand that. But what there will be articles from all of these journals that you need an institutional email. Thank you, Patrick, for that. There will be articles from these journals that are open access. And so you go to the website of the journal. The open access articles will often be by leading scholars. They will often be important articles. You can read those, and you can read all abstracts. All abstracts will be available to you. Of course, for that, I understand, you need data and you need electricity. It's not like it's magically going to pour into your head. You still need infrastructure, but you can read all the abstracts of all the articles every day. And many articles will be marked as orange or green and will be available. So shall we now, I want to move now to the last set of questions before we go to the audience for questions. And the last question I want to ask you is describe your dream article. And maybe also tell me what is the favorite article by a young scholar that you have published. And by young, I mean anything, I don't know, below 60. You can define young exactly as you wish, but what are you looking for? What was your favorite article? So Professor Adejunmobi, what is your dream submission you would like to receive?
Wow, I could speak on that for the next 1 hour. I'll see if I can condense my thoughts. My dream article, since we publish in African Literary and Cultural Studies, is an article that foregrounds current debates, with the emphasis on current debates in African literary and cultural studies. For the benefit of Nigerians who are listening in on the panel in particular, I think I want to add that we want our authors to work on all kinds of African literature, all kinds of Nigerian literature, but the most recent Nigerian literature would be helpful. Virtually every submission we receive from Nigeria is about Things Fall Apart and Death and the King's Horseman. Nigeria is a powerhouse in African literature, but judging from the submissions we receive, it would seem that creative writing in Nigeria stopped around 1970. What about, Ayobami Adebayo, Chigozie Obioma, Chinelo Paranta, Ohiko Braithwaite, and so many others that populate the 21st century in terms of African literature and cultural studies. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at. In fact, strangely enough, it's more commonplace for us to receive submissions by authors who are outside Nigeria on recent Nigerian writing than it is for us to receive submissions from authors who are in Nigeria about recent Nigerian writing. We want articles that foreground research that's been produced by scholars who specialize in African literary studies, including Nigerian literary studies. We are less interested in articles that start from, I don't know, Siberia, or somebody said something in Siberia about African literature. Somebody said something in Peru about African literature, very interesting, or about Peruvian literature. Why not start with Africa itself? Why not start with, and with experts who have a long history of publishing on African literature, who are located in your own country? We would like to see that. We would like to see a sense in our authors, an understanding that Africa is a big continent, it's a huge world, and that if we want additional references and background for our article, assuming you're writing from Nigeria about Nigerian literature, that you can draw from some other African literature or some other African kind of performance. We still have authors, and mainly again, they're from Nigeria, who feel that an article is incomplete if they do not reference William Shakespeare, William Wordsworth, William Blake, and all the Williams of English literature. What about Kenyan literature? What about Zimbabwean literature? You know, what about Ivorian literature? Why do we have to go into the archive of old English literature? So this is one of the lanes that we are trying to inhabit as a journal, a lane where you foreground criticism in African literary and cultural studies. Work by experts who have focused on African literary and cultural studies. Work that is current, that draws from what we see currently in African literature, African creative textuality, African performance, African cinema, African music. I'll say one or two more things quickly before I end. In terms of theoretical models, while we are open, we're ecumenical, we'd like you to use whatever you think is most suitable. I would say that some things are kind of like old, you know. The new historicism died a couple of centuries ago. You know, we can bypass that. You know, post-structuralism and hermeneutics, you know, we can do without that. There are discussions that are being had about African literature that are very, that come out of the 21st century. We'd like to see our authors engage much more with those kinds of theoretical discussions that are primary, that foreground African literature, because all theories come from somewhere. And the theories that take African cultural production as their point of departure are more interesting to us than the theories that do not take African cultural production as their point of departure. In terms of an article that published by a young scholar that I find interesting, I'm going to mention one that was written by a Nigerian who was resident in Nigeria at that point in time, because I think that's what's relevant for us. And the name of the author is Diekara Oloruntoba Oju, and the title of her article was State Power, Postmodern Identities and Conflict in Contemporary Nigerian Popular Music. So that's not an article about literature, but it's about contemporary Nigerian popular music. I'm tying that to questions of politics and identities in contemporary Nigeria. And we were very happy to publish that article, and it has received a lot of reviews. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Professor Fashiku, your dream article you would like to receive, please.
Thank you very much. Let me put it this way. As a philosophy, as a journal of philosophy, we are looking forward to articles that are analytical, critical, focused, and contributing to current debates in philosophy. Again, like I said, it is not just a straight-jacketed article that must be philosophy alone. There are also articles that are of interest to philosophers, though not written by philosophers. Articles from historians, articles from sociologists, articles from language experts, articles from linguists, and even from scholars in other areas, from law, for example, law, from education, from even from the sciences, you know, that are more or less looking at things from the philosophical perspective, raising philosophical questions in those areas. Don't forget that in many areas of scholarship, philosophy is the bedrock of scholarship. And so there are issues, questions that are raised in any of these disciplines. And so papers that are able to raise these critical questions and discuss them analytically are usually welcome in second order. And again, we're also looking at articles that engage African scholars and their works. In this regard, the second order has published a number of articles on Kwasi Wiredu. In fact, our 2019 edition has a paper written by Kwasi Wiredu in one of the earlier editions that we have to republish. And when we did, a scholar did a review of that article, and then which we also gladly published. There was an article written by Barry Allen, one of the leading scholars in African studies, African philosophy. It was published in 2019 edition, and a young scholar in University of Lagos made a critique of that Barry Allen paper. That critique was first, apart from the editors and the reviewers who looked at it, was sent to Barry Allen to look at, and he was happy, that his work was engaged by other scholars. That new paper responding to Barry Allen, which was the Barry Allen paper, was published in 2019 edition of the journal, and the response to Barry Allen was published in 2020 edition of the journal. So we are looking for scholars who engage African philosophers like Kwasi Wiredu, Kwame Jeshe, Akin Makinde, and contemporary scholars like Jim Una in University of Lagos, scholars in University of Ibadan, scholars in Kenya, scholars in East Africa, North Africa, engaging, because just like Professor Adejumo said, there are a number of works that African scholars are doing, and that it's just that our scholars are not focusing on them. They begin to look at works done by, for example, in philosophy, Aristotle, Hegel, and philosophers of the, I would call them of the old. Good, they laid the foundation, but African scholars have engaged and re-engaged some of these issues within the context of African studies. And so we are looking at scholars and contributions that will engage philosophical issues from the African context. We are looking in this regard. There is a paper that was recently submitted to us, though it has not passed. It's still being reviewed, but the interest of the paper, in fact, is from a postgraduate study, a postgraduate student in one of the universities close to us here, from a postgraduate student, and the paper is discussing issue of destiny beyond the discussion that has been done in the past. He is raising more critical questions, challenging existing structure, and raising theoretical frameworks that could be used to discuss and engage this issue in the nearest future. So these are the kind of papers that we are looking for. Second order is also interested in article of philosophical interest in any area of and tradition of philosophy, in any area and tradition of, because it's not just Anglophone. We're also looking at paper from Francophone countries like Senegal, from like even our Benin Republic here, that write in French. If we have contributions from this diverse area, it enriches, it will enrich the quality of the journal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I want us to leave some time for questions, but I do want to hear from the other two gents about your dream article, please, the ideal article you'd like to receive. Professor Iheka.
Okay, so I'll be brief. When I think about the ideal article, I think of one that lays out its state very clearly, beginning with the abstract. That is the first thing that an editor looks at when they're looking at a paper. So what is this how is this article contributing? Especially as we said earlier, that, for Professor Chona, for Professor Adejumobi, they're mostly reading material in history or related field, or in literature and cultural studies and related field. But I am this literary scholar who gets an article, like one I'm looking at this morning. It's on, our value chain in agriculture in Burkina Faso. I know nothing about that. So how can you make this presentable in the abstract? And then as I begin to read the article, in ways that I see what the scholarship has been on this subject, on related field, how are you intervening? What are you contributing to this conversation? That makes it clear in a way that a non-specialist is able to appreciate that. I think that is that is the primary thing that is primary thing we look out for. I look out for in an article. One that is also, I think, part of the issue that's been coming up is this use of theory for theory's sake, or citation for citation's sake, when the citation is not doing the work. And I see Professor Chon, laughing, because on his Facebook, it comes back to this again and again, encouraging, scholars, especially working in Nigeria and in Africa, to really think of, the use of these theoretical frameworks. I saw a question from me earlier about a piece being rejected in African Studies Review because of theoretical framework. Often part of why it's rejected is not because it's really because you have all these theories out there and they're not moving. There's no strategic function for the piece. So a good one is such that if you must mobilize theory, let's see how are you building on it? How are you re-articulating, Foucault, or wherever it is? How does the African context challenge Foucault? How does it help us to stretch and rewrite Foucault in interesting and dynamic ways? That is something that we're interested in seeing, when I look at a paper. And it's such too, the other thing too is that, especially for our colleagues in the social sciences who submit to our journal, often the papers, they're heavy with the data. You've done this amazing research, but the data is underutilized. The data is underutilized, So we want a paper that is making use of the data. You've gotten these resources. What argumentative, analytical yield can you produce, from this? So these are the so that's what makes an ideal paper for me, where the significance and arguments is well laid out. Theoretical framework, if you use this, is strategically deployed, to advance the course that the paper is making, and then the data is really well analyzed to support the course, and it's written well. There's just something, often you get seduced by the writing that you even forget that this paper is not offering anything new. So it's good, for the paper to be
now you're confusing us.
to be well written. And in terms of sample paper, we have one forthcoming, by Femi Romosele, which is on music videos and Lagos, which is forthcoming African Studies Review, which I really enjoyed reading and I look forward to. Another one relevant to our context here too is Vivian Liu, who does work on Southeastern, migrants and traders, writing on Igbo traders in China, which just came out, I think, in the last issue of African Studies Review, Vivian Liu. Southeastern traders in China, the kind of diasporic agitations that they make, between Nigeria and China. It's an interesting piece, and developed within the context of LSA as well in the last couple of years. So those two papers are such that I would recommend, by. And then I also want to point out that ASR is open also to scholarship in the humanities. We don't just publish, in fact, one of our goals going forward is to have more humanities research represented in the journal. So I hope, our colleagues, in these areas will consider the journal for their work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, I just managed, after 5 rounds of revisions, I think, to please African Studies Review enough to finally say, okay then. But they made me work so hard.
We are pleased to have it. It's an amazing paper at Oxford. Yes, thank you for sending it to us. Yeah.
I just actually, it's a joke I'm making, but journals receive maybe 20 times as many articles as they can publish. So my
Yes.
submission rate is, or my publication rate is about 15% of submissions. So the other 85, they may be good, but those 15 are the ones that make it through.
Okay. Right.
Welcome, Prof. Ashiku. It's good to see you now here.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well, and we can see you now.
Thank you very much. I'm glad.
I'm going to ask Professor Ochonu now to speak about his dream article, and then can I ask the other editors to read through the questions and see which questions are for you, and then we can have a round where you can each respond to the questions. Please, Prof, your dream article.
All right, my dream article with the emphasis on dream, because the dream article never comes, basically. Let's be honest. If it came, then there wouldn't be peer review, would there? So I'm not, but yeah, but I get your point, Professor Kotze. My dream article as an editor would be a history, will focus on the history of Africans and their cultures and their economics and their politics and their experiences and their ways of seeing the world and so on and so forth. It would not be a history of Europeans acting in or upon Africa, right? That's the first one. My dream article would would show clearly what literatures or historiographies it's contributing to. It will show clearly the gap that it is filling. My dream article would be properly framed meaning tell us the historical stakes. Why should I care? Why is this important, right? It makes sense to you, it's important to you, it interests you. Why should I or other people in the field care about this? Why is this so important? Help me see it. Don't assume that I will see it, that I will just get it. Even if I do get it as an editor, I will pretend that I don't, because I'm trying to represent those people out there who are not editors, who do get to read the final product. I'm trying to impersonate them. So make it easy on me as an editor, right? So that I don't have to strain so hard to get the gist of what it is that you're trying to say. My dream article would cite current sources, similar to what Professor Adejimobi was saying, would cite current sources and would engage with current debates. My dream article would not relitigate or reopen old or settled debates, or go over familiar territories. You can't reinvent the academic wheel, as they say. My dream article would be very analytical, would be highly analytical, meaning that I want to hear your voice, your own voice. Where are you in this article, right? Great research, excellent research even, right? Great original sources. But writing an academic article is not, you're not writing a report. It's not like go to that village and collect sources and then write up your report. No, this is one level above journalism. No offense to the journalists if they are journalists listening, right? So the analytical rigor has to be there. I'm a sucker for analysis, for good, original, sound analysis, very compelling, persuasive analysis. And my dream article has to have a coherent argument that I can follow from beginning to end. You articulate it in the abstract, but also I should be able to follow it. You should be able to signpost it and remind me of this argument, because I have a lot of things going on in my head from beginning to end. That's my dream article should be able to do that. Show me a clear argument, a clear argumentative identity for this paper. And finally, my dream article should, I would say, I'm trying to find a good way to say it so that it doesn't come out wrong. My dream article should be able to respect the sources that it's using, whether it's archival, oral, and so on, but it should be able to intervene in the sources, right? You should be able to interpret the sources and put their own inflection on the sources. It's, the sources themselves are impressive. But don't just throw them at me, right? Don't throw the sources at me. Don't throw your data at me. Give it some structure. Discipline the sources. I think Kajitan can relate to this much better, because the literary people, discipline it for me, right? Discipline the sources and put your own voice in it so that it makes sense, so that the sources have a clear and focused and coherent argument. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Yes.
Thank you so much. So you've heard high-level comments from the editors. Now I want to just put the responsibility on the audience. No one is going to send you push notifications. You have to set that up. Go to the journal that is your interest, sign up for the alerts. Go to Google Scholar, sign up for the alerts. You have to take charge. And if you take charge of what knowledge you want to come to you, Father Google or Uncle Google will do it for you, but you have to sign up. So Lagos Studies can't post things about every journal, about every discipline. Lagos Studies does a great job, but you have to take responsibility and to sign up for the things you want to come into your inbox. I'm now going to invite the speakers, the editors, to each respond to questions. We have a further 15 minutes. So each of you, 3 minutes or so, 4 minutes. Please, Professor Adejumobi.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. It's not my strong suit to be brief, but I'll make an effort. The first thing I will say in response to some of the questions that have been asked by members of the audience is, when you submit your article to a journal, for those who are asking, what can a young scholar do? Be prepared to revise your article, if need be, 20 times. I find that because many authors are accustomed to submitting their articles to predatory journals that tell you that they will publish your article in 6 weeks, when a peer-reviewed journal tells you to go and revise the article, some authors seem to take offense at that. We may ask you to revise your article 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Be prepared to revise your article. That's very important. Somebody asked, what if the reviewers are saying 3 different things? That's a very complicated situation. Usually in our journal, we try to kind of like bring some harmony into the reviewer comments. But one of the things you can do is dedicate different parts of the article to the key points being made by these different reviewers. This goes back to the question of being prepared to revise your article. Sometimes when we ask authors to revise their article, they kind of like add bits and pieces to different parts of the article. They add something to the beginning, something to the end, something to the middle. And then you get this very disjointed article. You need to go back to scratch, reconceive, rethink the article in such a way that you'll be able to integrate some of the different concerns that are being expressed by the reviewers, which may not necessarily often be in contradiction with each other, even though they're asking you to look at different aspects of the article. It means go back to the drawing board. Finally, my last point, one person mentioned submitting an article to JALA, and JALA was unable to review that particular article. I will say that depending on what the subject of the article is, if it's requiring someone to have an expertise in many different things, it may be difficult for the journal to find reviewers who have an expertise in 3 things at once. Sometimes we're able to find one reviewer who's an expert in A, and in fact, I just did that a few days ago, and find a second reviewer who's an expert in B. And I tell the reviewer, reviewer A, don't worry about this other aspect of this thing, because you have no expertise there, and reviewer B, don't worry about this aspect. Sometimes we're able to do that, but sometimes we're just not able to find the reviewers, and we don't want to do a kind of hatchet job on the article and just have somebody who doesn't know anything about the article review the article. So sometimes that's an indication that the article would be better processed in a different kind of journal that requires a different kind of disciplinary expertise. We are a very narrowly disciplinary journal, and the scholars who have that disciplinary expertise in literary studies tend to have very clearly demarcated areas of expertise. They are not able to do necessarily a wider range of things. I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Adejunmobi. Professor Fachiku.
Well, thank you very much. I'm running through the charts. I've been trying to see whether there are questions specifically for me. Couldn't get one.
You don't have to respond if you don't.
All right, but there is the point that I need to make. I can see a number of our colleagues in Nigeria much interested in publishing their articles in the journals outside Nigeria. That is part of the challenge we have in Nigeria, especially journals that are based in Nigeria. Scholars prefer to send their papers to journals in Europe, in America, especially journals that are based outside Nigeria, because of the onshore, offshore request for promotion and so on and so forth. And this is part of the problem that is killing journals in Nigeria. Most journals in Nigeria don't get patronage because even good papers are not sent to journals locally, because some would assume that, well, it's local, and most universities in Nigeria prefer that their journal, they want to look at articles that are published in international journal, established journal, and so on and so forth. And this has implications for local publishers of journals. And then, but I would like to encourage scholars, even our colleagues here, should also help to strengthen journals at home. I'm appealing to our colleagues who are here, who are part of this, that should encourage our colleagues to send their journals to, their articles and papers to journals at home, so that these journals could also be elevated to the levels that it will be accepted internationally. Thank you very much.
That is such an important comment, and one that came up a lot last year also in the discussion, the importance of building journals on the ground and how to do that, how to invest in them, as if Nigeria is not international. In the past, I know that it was a requirement that any self-respecting scholar of any aspect of Africa would publish in journals that are based on the continent. And it would be really good if those of us in positions of power were to bring that back as a requirement. I think that is something that we can easily do. We are becoming heads of department, our generation. We are heads of important institutes. It's time to start putting the pressure again on that really important issue. Thank you, Professor. I'm now going to ask Professor Iheka if you have any comments you want to make from the questions.
Yeah, I think most of them have been addressed. I just want to reiterate a point that Professor Adejunmobi made earlier about the idea of revision. It is nobody, and this is not peculiar to scholars who are just beginning their careers. Dr. Kutsia just talked about a submission process with African Studies Review. I just got a paper placed in New Literary History, which started many years ago. In fact, the paper was originally, one of the earliest submission was to Journal of African Cultural Studies, and when those reviews came back, it was revised and resubmitted. But it was clear to me I had to retool that paper to make it. And then it also became clear to me that I needed a more literary journal than than what Journal of African Cultural Studies could offer. So the point I'm trying to make is that the idea of revision shouldn't be taken as a reflection on your abilities and all that. When we say revise, or when a journal says revise, they're saying, we see what you're doing, we hear you. However, it is not there yet. And it's an invitation to keep on working on it to get it there. Maybe there are those who just do it once and it happens, but for most of us, we have to stay at it, and I think, I can say that I know the editors here that they will spend the time as far as the potential is there, and you're willing to work on it, to get it to where you want to be. So please don't be afraid of revisions. And one final thing there are times when not all peer reviews are useful, we have to, and that's that. And then, editors often will do the navigation for you to say, well, maybe pay attention to this and don't, but feel free also to disagree respectfully with peer reviews and say why this is not the most appropriate thing to do. Often an editor wants you to write the paper they want to write, and then it's fine to say, a peer review, it's fine to say no, but don't reject a suggestion because it's tedious. It is because the logic of that suggestion runs contrary to the spirit of your paper. So that's that. I will leave it there.
Thank you, Professor Eich. I do want to say that revision process almost broke my spirit. So I understand all of us editors here have been in situations where we had to revise and revise and revise, where eventually you just don't want to anymore. But then if you don't, it will not get published. Editors want to publish you. We really want to publish you. We're not mean. Professor Ochonu, did you have comments from the questions?
Yes, I do have a couple actually. But I'll start with the writing issue that Professor Heka commented upon earlier. I think one way to get your leg in the door, because editors are busy people with busy lives, and we'll get, as Professor Coetzee was saying, we'll get a lot of submissions. One way to get your foot in the door is to actually get an editor to read your work closely. And then after reading it closely, to be impressed enough to send it for peer review, not to reject it at the desk level, as we call it, right? One way to do that is to at least ensure that the paper is well written. To be honest, I've come across a lot of papers that are simply just not well written. And it gives me a headache to even read it, to make sense of it. That's the truth. I'm not trying to be snacky here, right? Because there are a million other things that I would rather do with my time than just read a poorly written paper. And you can tell that this person haven't taken the time to clean up this paper, to proofread it. I'm not your copy editor, I'm not your proofreader's editor, right? So just make it easy for me to actually read the paper. Whether or not I reject it or send it out for peer review or whatever its fate down the road, that's a separate matter. But at least make it possible for me to want to read it closely enough, to take it seriously and to send it for peer review. That's very important. There's a question here from Angela Olisama. She said, does the Journal of African History encourage budding scholars? Those are her terms, budding scholars to submit. Yes, we do. We absolutely do. We welcome submissions from graduate students, from people in the PhD pipeline. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, I think here we need to be, especially there are a lot of young people listening, we need to be very transparent. We don't publish a whole lot of articles written by early career people, or let me just say graduate students, because I think that's the right term, graduate students, people who are still on their way to the PhD. We have published quite a few. I've been editor for 2 years. I've seen quite a few, but the majority of our articles come from people on the tenure track who have jobs, who have institutional affiliations, or who are well established. But we are doing more now to encourage graduate students to submit to us, and we are working with them. We give them more time. We devote more time to working with them. As Professor Coetzee said, we want you to publish. before you get on the job market, before you defend your PhD, we want you to have a publication. But also try to meet us halfway by getting the article in a good shape so that when it comes to us, we are not compelled to just reject it at the desk level, so that we actually take it through the peer review process. Even if it gets rejected, at least you get something from it, right? You get the peer review reports and comments. Sometimes an article is not accepted because it's just not a good fit. It has nothing to do with the brilliance of the article, with your own, the quality of the article, the research that went into the article. It's just, I've had to turn things down because it's just not a good fit for our journal. It's too much focused on, on policy, for instance. I get a lot of articles that are policy oriented, and that's just not the kind of journal that we are. We don't publish that kind of thing. And sometimes, when I do that, I recommend other journals to them. I say, okay, why don't you try this journal? This seems like it would be a good fit for your paper, but we're just not that kind of journal. Sometimes we get papers that should be submitted to other disciplinary journals. So that's sometimes the problem. Finally, a question: how do you determine when to accept a writer's voice? I can't remember his or her name. Well, what I was trying to say in regard to that is that often what I see is, people just dumping their data on us without helping us to see the point of it, helping us to see what the data is saying that is so important, that revises the way we think about this topic or that topic, or that challenges, this argument or that argument in the field. That's where your voice comes in. You need to bring your voice into the process. You need to interpret, you need to analyze it for us. We want to hear what your informed viewpoints are, to put it crudely. It's not enough to just let the data speak, as it were. All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you I'm just going to, before I sign off, before I say amen, I just want to say, empower yourself. Don't wait for someone else to tell you or give you something. Sign up for alerts. Familiarize yourself with the journal. Be like a detective, working out everything you can about a journal before you submit to that journal. Read, read, read. The best way to be a good writer is to be a reader. Read, read, read as many articles as you can. Thank you to these fantastic editors who have brought important ideological and intellectual and even metaphysical questions to this discussion. We thank you very much for your time, and thank you also to the audience for coming, and please send us those excellent articles. Thank you all very much. Good afternoon and good morning, Prof. Adejunmobi. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Prof.
Professor Adejunmobi, I would like to have your email, and if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Let me see if I can send it to you before they send us off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In any case, if you could write, mine
Okay,
is.
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, okay, okay. I copy that. That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. So
You're right.
I'll get in touch with you shortly.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.